Hey everybody, welcome back to day 3, which would be day 8 in our process. Again, no pressure on the fact if you've been taking these back-to-back days, because some of these things might have a little time, and that as you build something you want to work on, or you start working with organizations you really are desperately wanting to work with, it may take a little bit of time. So give yourself some time, but at the same time, we talked about in SMART goals, don't just say I'm going to do something, set some goals that are measurable and time-based. That being said, today we're going to get talking about getting unbiased feedback and validating the need. Going back to that Roth IRA, right? The open discussion and tussling was one thing, but as you started to put in that rapid prototyping, as we've done for the last couple of days, and you find your audience and they give you more feedback, that validating it to the test, right? So if you've worked on, your solution and you started getting feedback or getting validation, what's called a lot of times, customer validation, if the process or the plan you have is resonating with people, that is a nice way to say, like, they're going, oh my gosh, yes, this is amazing, we should do it, then proceed forward. If they're going, I don't know if that sounds realistic, or I don't really think that's going to be effective, once again, don't take it personal. Understand that they're giving you feedback, which is a gift. I think right now we're in a time that if somebody tells you that something you've done isn't great, sometimes it's seen as hateful or bad. It's never bad. The market is the market. And when people are giving you the time to say your idea isn't good, they're giving you their time. And that is a gift. Truly it is. So that getting that unbiased feedback is now what we're really about. You've jotted down some ideas, you've got a process in place, or at least you have a plan on whiteboard. You found that audience, you help broadcast it out. Them testing it with you is allowing you to what we call make some iterations. On the IRA that we talked about last week, iterate, reflect, and adjust. Iterate, reflect, and adjust. So is that first idea you had made some small changes or some pivots? Probably has. Matter of fact, it should. Or is that idea you have so good that people are like, oh my gosh, yes, we should do this. As we talked about in the really generic example of if you wanted to do 25 and 25, dog and cat food for your Humane Society, if people love your idea, by the way, that was just a vague idea. We didn't necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of how you would do that. That's up to you. But as you start laying out that plan is starting to, like, what you're wanting to get back on. So theoretically, again, if you put on your Facebook group or your parents' Facebook group, hey, I'm wanting to do this kind of raise, could you all drop it by my house? If the answers are none and no one's giving you feedback, something's not right. And on the other hand, if everybody's excited about it, okay, start asking them follow-up questions. That is seriously important. One of the things that I've seen too often in students is that they don't necessarily have the confidence, and that's okay. But here's the exciting thing. I think that when adults see what you're wanting to do, they're going to get excited. They're going to start building maybe a team for you. You may start seeing a lot of people start going, yes, how can I help? Matter of fact, in episode 2, when we were talking to Mr. Goal of Uber Elevate, he was even talking about the same thing. You started forming teams and people want to be led. That person can be you. Nathan Harris, same thing. You don't have to know everything. When you say what you want to do, other people might follow. And as in yesterday's episode, Jeff Hoffman said the exact same thing. Really, a lot of what we're talking about here is leadership. And you getting that feedback shows leadership. So your assignment today is launch your beta idea, right? Be able to pitch this solution to audiences and stakeholders and gather some meaningful feedback. Put your stake in the ground. I'm raising 25 bags of dog food for my Humane Society, or I'm going to work with our senior citizens by doing this, or I'm going to help an opioid center by doing that. Again, totally your call. I'm just giving you some generalities here. But by you saying, I'm going to start, now that, once again, that good positive pressure begins. And on your SMART goal, you have now set yourself a timeline. And be transparent as heck. Matter of fact, on day 5, I'm going to talk about how you can really use social media to start amplifying this stuff up. But when you say, I'm going to do it, people will say, okay, what did you do? And I think that's going to take you to that next level that I'm so incredibly excited for you to do. And literally, anything that's in our network, you want us to share stuff, and we'll talk about this again definitely in day 5, but tell me what you want to share. Tell me who you want to connect with. We're just giving you a small sampling of who we're starting to connect with right now. If you weren't impressed by Jeff Hoffman's network on who he's worked with, maybe you want to reach out to him. Maybe you want to put some things on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. It's our honor, it's our privilege to say, and by the way, taking no credit, like, hey, one of our students is doing this. Or even if you don't even want us to mention that you're a student here, just let us know. Like, hey, I'm working on doing this for my community. Could you please share it? That is literally all we expect. Nothing more. If you just go ahead and do, that is literally all of like gold to us. So let us know. But yes, today is the day that you should launch your beta. Get on, make that plan, start executing now. Okay, so I'm excited is that the video that we have next is with Kate Purmal. One of the very first things that really is tough for a lot of students is getting over what is called a lot of times the imposter syndrome. And by imposter syndrome, you just don't feel as confident because you think that you don't know what you're doing. And so you feel kind of guilty for all the things you don't know. But Kate's going to talk to you about why exactly, especially if you're a minority. She talks about how a lot of times imposter syndrome is worse for minorities and women. She's going to talk to you about how to get over that, so it's really positive. Her background is stellar. Listen to who she's worked for and what she's done. This lady is a very accomplished lady, and I can't wait for you to hear from her. Other than that, we'll see you tomorrow. Again, if it takes a couple days for you to get this section over, that's fine. But if you want to watch tomorrow's in succession, that's cool too. Other than that, this is Don Wettrick reminding you that I forgot to turn my lights on. Hopefully I'm not too grainy, but those opportunities are everywhere. We'll see you. All right, now we're joined with Kate Purmal. Kate, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. It's so great to be here. Thank you, Don.
So your body of work is perfect for what we're starting to do. We're now in week 2, and some of the students are now, they've kind of scanned their world. You know, what are their talents and what are their passions, but also they're starting to look for what the opportunities are and what they could possibly realistically do in the next couple of weeks. Normally the first barrier to entry, so to speak, is like belief in oneself. I know that when I started, I really struggled with, am I the right person for this? And are they sure that they can trust me to get these things done? You've really worked with a lot of top people in getting them to see this. So give us a little bit of your background, because your background's incredible. And then like kind of walk us through this mindset to the belief in yourself and not think that you're a total imposter.
Sure, of course. Thank you. Well, my background, I was the 5th employee at a company called Palm Computing, which was built the precursor to the Apple iPhone, which was the Palm Pilot, and was a part of that company, taking it from 5 to 300 employees, $300 million in revenue, really brilliant, bleeding edge technology solution. And it was at the time, it was a really sort of a hottest thing on the market. So, and I've been involved with startups ever since. Subsequent to that, I became CEO of several privately held companies and startups. I coach and advise founders and CEOs of startups. I've invested in startups, and I serve on corporate boards. And so really all around this startup world, I've played for the last 15 or 20 years, and it's really where my passions are. What I know to be true is that the people that get funding and who bring their ideas to market and attract the best people to work with them are those who not only believe in themselves, but they really passionately believe in their ideas and their products and services. So this issue of being uncertain or lacking confidence in that makes a big difference. I've just spent the last 2 years really beginning to work on this area of confidence and feeling like a fraud or an imposter, because it's something that affects many people in the work environment, not just in startups. And so that's the work that I was going to share with you today, Don.
Awesome. Let's get into it.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to share my screen here.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Fantastic. So we'll talk about what imposter syndrome is in a minute, but really what I'm about to talk about is the secret to achieving our highest potential and leveling the playing field. Because the more confident that we can be, the more aligned our sense of self can be with how really capable we are, the better we're going to be at really achieving what we're meant to do in this world. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about human potential. And spoiler alert, this isn't about working harder. It's not about self-promoting more or leaning in. This is really about really connecting with your power and your strength as an individual. So the imposter phenomenon is something that we know that 70% of the population has. What the imposter phenomenon is, it's this experience of feeling like, despite evident success, and I would perceive, or an individual perceives their competence to be less than others perceive it to be. So plenty of people around you will look at you and say, oh my gosh, so smart, such a great entrepreneur, such good ideas, but you have set doubts or lack confidence or feel like, wow, if they really knew, they wouldn't think that, right? So there's this real disconnect. And unfortunately, that leaves a lot of potential on the table. I'll talk briefly about the behaviors, and then Don, get your thoughts on this. So the key behaviors here for imposters are perfectionism. They're striving for flawlessness. They often over-prepare, or they may set unattainable ideals because they think in order to be good enough, they have to be perfect. And that requires a lot of extra work and a lot of stress and anxiety. Rejection sensitivity. This is really critical when we're talking about startup founders and entrepreneurs. They're concerned about it being evaluated, judged, or receiving criticism about the work they're doing. They're afraid of failure, and they're constantly seeking approval. And when you're coming out with a new idea, there's a lot of experimentation, there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of criticism, lots of people here to give you good ideas. So that doesn't work as well if you're sensitive to rejection. Depressed entitlement is a lack of perception that you should be here. For some reason, you don't perceive yourself to be part of the in-group, those who deserve to be here. Could be because you're a woman and you're coding. Could be because you are, you have a different ethnic background. It could be because you don't have the same education and training. It could be because you've never done this before, right? So there's a lot of reasons why some people think, wow, well, if I just had all that, I'd be okay. But because I don't really deserve to be here. Lack of confidence. This is purely a lack of a belief in myself and my ability to meet my challenges, right? Am I going to be able to do that thing that I've never done before next time? I know I did it last time, but wow, am I going to really be able to do it next time? Because it seems a lot harder. Feeling like a fraud. This is doubting my accomplishments or feeling like people are going to figure out that was just, I got lucky. Or people think I'm more capable than I am, and oh my gosh, I'm afraid they're going to figure it out. And then enmeshment is really not being able to be clear on your own needs and how to take care of yourself and get your needs satisfied, being overly focused on other people's needs or requirements of you. This may keep you from speaking up and sharing your ideas. It might have you doing work that you really shouldn't be doing. When, as a startup founder or as an entrepreneur, you just need to focus your efforts on your idea and getting it done. So, Don, do these sound like they might be familiar behaviors for your...
Yeah, and speaking through the lens of like where a lot of the students are is, I would say probably the top one I've seen is rejection sensitivity. Putting yourself out there is a heck of a thing, especially when you're young. And the age that you're at, you're like, oh, I can't, I can't make this difference, or I can't really do this. When in reality, it's just the opposite. I think a lot of times people are attracted and encouraged by youth trying to do something, and the leadership to say, well, let's give this a go, is that secret sauce. And then ironically enough, feeling like a fraud and lack of confidence can go away quickly if you start to connect with some of these people you want to network with. In a day and age where we're talking about, well, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Okay, know people. And I'm not trying to make it sound that simplistic, but it is. If you have a just cause and if you're on a mission, people see themselves in you. If you're a 16-year-old, I'm going to make this difference in my community. They're like, man, young lady, I was you when I was your age, and I want to help. And I think
Yeah.
that, these
Inspire
imposter
people.
behaviors, what's that?
I said they want to help and they're inspired by you. I mean,
Yeah,
it's really inspiring when entrepreneurs come to me. I love it.
absolutely. So yeah, anyway, keep going. But yes, those are the things that I do think that they're all right there, but the confidence to move forward and for them to like at least reach out to people, to say, hey, I may not go on this journey alone, but that leadership quality of saying I'm going to step forward and then build the team is really important.
Yeah, I agree. So we also know that these behaviors tend to affect women more than men, and I believe it's a big part of why there's a declining representation of women in the highest levels of corporations. We probably all know that women start out about 50-50 with men at entry level when they enter the corporate world, and they drop down to 1 in 5 by the time they get to the C-suite. I've been the CEO of companies. I've been the senior vice president of a $4 billion tech company. I've been all the way along the lines here, and I know the pressure goes up with every single promotion. And so this is really an issue that's difficult for all people, but particularly women as they climb the ladder. And that's part of the reason I researched this. So the popular solutions to overcoming this dynamic, it exists in the workplace, it exists in entrepreneurial environments, it exists in fundraising, is to change the environment, eliminate unconscious bias in the workplace, make work environments more inclusive. I'm all for that. That's fantastic. But not all environments are like that, and I don't think the VC funding environment will ever be like that. It's a little bit of a cutthroat, competitive environment. So, given that you're probably going to have to function in environments that aren't super psychologically safe, if you will, let's talk about how the individual can change their behavior potentially to be more effective in this environment, even if they're feeling like an imposter. And that's things like working harder or leaning in or self-promoting. Those are the current popular solutions. But frankly, most of these people who are doing this are already leaning in and working really hard, Don? I mean,
Yeah,
your
no, I
experience.
think I think that's the thing that always kind of scares me, and there is definitely a lot of strong personalities out there asking you to hustle and grind more, but you feel like a loser or feel like a failure when you're like, I am hustling, I am grinding, and I'm not getting somewhere, and then those feelings of inadequacy multiply. The same thing with self promote. I think there's a lot of people that just see through that BS. Like, oh, I'm an influencer, and I'm a I'm going to take a picture next to a card that's not mine. Man, people know that. People know that. You sharing an authentic journey, I think, is way more, authentic. But I think is one of the reasons why I also love this course is that I'm talking to 16, 17, 18-year-olds, sometimes younger. That influencer that you might like was either A, lucky, or B, early, or C, they knew what they were doing. But that confidence of like, yeah, I've got everything put together is false. And so I'm glad that you're acknowledging this, that like, that work harder is one thing, but understanding where you're going and that belief in oneself is another thing. But yeah, that whole self-promotion thing, people will promote you if you're doing the world good. If you have to promote yourself, there's a reason why.
That's exactly right. And people see, and that's the thing, leaning into self-promoting doesn't work. Because if you are uncomfortably lack confidence and you're in an environment like meeting with people in the networking with people, networking with executives or leaders in business, and you're 17 years old, right? It's a little intimidating. So it makes sense that you'd be, sort of hold back a little bit, and in order to feel safe and not say something stupid, right? I'm on a corporate board right now, and I'm the only woman on the board. I'm the only one without industry experience. It's a financial services company, and I'm 20 years younger than the other independent directors on the board, and it's intimidating. And so, I find myself watching what I ask and what I say a little bit because I'm the new kid on the block and I'm not an expert. That's totally understandable. That's just your safety patterning kicking in to keep you safe. In addition, we know the people who self-promote, as you just said, are less likely to be liked and hired because people see right through it. If you're not really confident and you're projecting it artificially, people see through it. So let's talk about imposter behaviors and where they come from. So really, these are imposter behaviors that we talked about are created in an environment in which people question, am I competent? Do I belong? Am I safe? And do I deserve to be here? Frankly, in every environment, we're always asking those questions. And we're looking over to the right to authority figures to tell us how we're doing. Are we getting praised? Are we getting rewards? Are we getting good grades? Or are we getting criticized? Are our ideas being, people punching holes in our ideas? Are they rejecting our requests for meetings or funding? So all of that leads into how we feel in an environment, whether we feel confident or not. And if we're always trying to get positive feedback and avoid negative feedback, which most of us do, because that's how we're raised, then what we develop is these behaviors of perfectionism, workaholism, reactivity to feedback so that we're sensitive to rejection or sensitive to feedback, and a lack of confidence. And those kinds of behaviors, when they go on and on over time, particularly for people in school, academic, or work environments where they're constantly feeling that anxiety and stress, can lead to burnout, and it can lead to health issues and depression. So this whole way of being isn't very sustainable. It's uncomfortable, and it really doesn't allow you to operate at your highest and best good. Usually has you wasting a lot of energy on things that are not really driving you forward in the best way possible. So what's the solution? The solution is to create more resiliency and autonomy, really have a stronger sense of self. That's what autonomy means. To really know who you are, to believe in yourself and believe in your ideas, and develop some really good personal boundaries so that you can be less reactive in a work environment, an academic environment. Any thoughts on that, Don, about how this resonates with your students and teachers?
Yeah. The resiliency and autonomy. I know that when I first started to work on our foundation, when I took over and I made the leap from being a teacher to a founder, that belief in oneself really was two things: getting feedback, and then also some of that resiliency of that feedback was a gift. I shouldn't take it personal. That I'm in a learning mode, and I remember, and really one of the reasons why I like, if the students are taking the class, great. What I'm encouraging more to do is to be a part of the LinkedIn group, because it is that leaning on others for some good, positive feedback. And I'm here to tell you, I realize that the most valuable people in the world are the people that are genuinely happy for you when things go right, and are there for you when you need feedback, and not just comforting words. Feedback in the sense that it's going to make you better. I've met a lot of people in this world that there's a lot of people that want to give you advice when you're down, but they don't want to give you advice, or they're not really happy for you when things go well. So that's where that resiliency then comes in.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was excellent.
And most advice is not about you, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
the key. And that's really what the solution is to develop a resilient identity. And we're developing techniques to do this. My business partner and I, Joshua, are writing a book on this, so that book will be out sometime next year. It'll be called The Imposter Breakthrough. But the real key is to be able to take feedback and not just automatically internalize it and take it personally. So this half circle that you see on the slide here, this is really developing a personal boundary where I'm myself and I have a boundary, or I have a barrier. Input can get through it, but I'm gonna stop it there and decide how I want to deal with that, and then leave things I don't want to deal with on the outside. So this means that in order to do this, one of the best ways to do this is to actually have a higher authority. So we've looked to external authorities in the past, and we take everything that they say and internalize it right away and react to it. Rather than doing that, we have a higher authority that we hold within us or around us, and that higher authority is really looking out for our highest and best good, and the highest and best good for our business and our idea and the people we work with. What is in the highest and best good? And it wants us to be autonomous. It wants us to be operating within our values. It wants us to be curious and be able to take that feedback and really think about it. It wants us to have confidence so that we can promote our ideas and bring them to life. It wants us to be compassionate for ourselves so that we don't attack ourselves when others criticize us. So this, when you develop this sort of higher authority view, in addition to the external authority, so you have a balance to that, suddenly when praise comes in or when criticism comes in, you can decide, do I want to take it or not? As an example, I have a client that just got hired at Google to completely redo the way they do user privacy. And so they've formed this team of unbelievable superstars from all over the world who have PhDs in every subject known to man that's related to that. And here she is running this team. And she said to me the other day, Kate, I feel like I have to know the answer. And I said, all right, so, so I get it. You feel like you have to know the answer. And that's one of the things that makes you reactive. It makes you scared. It makes you anxious. I get it. It makes you lack confidence. But what do you know to be true, Sarah? And she's like, wow. Well, one thing I know is they hired me, so they must think I know what I'm doing. Another thing is, if I look at my career, I've spent my entire career solving really hard problems and doing that with teams. And so I actually know how to do that. I have a great team around me. And I also now realize, as we're talking, that, you know what, I don't have to have the answer. We as a team need to come up with the answer. I need to just talk about how I'm going to get the team to bring an answer to the table. So really, this idea of creating this higher authority creates space for you to include all of those things you know about yourself and you know about your idea. Nobody else has done this before. This idea is a great idea. All of that gets to be held in there, so you don't have to be reactive to things.
Yeah, again, I always go back to I've had help with a team that really helps me through that. Going it alone, I've met some solopreneurs, and heck, even going to pitch competitions, a lot of times the judges are like, we judge you not only by your product or your service or app, but on who's around you and who's surrounding you and the team. Right. So that really resonates, because those people can really give you that I am competent, I belong, I am safe through the constant feedback and growth.
Yeah, and this is really, throughout my career, I've had champions who have helped me make leaps of faith. And, that what I mean is a CEO of a company, when I was in my first job out of school, who said, you know what, Kate, this work you're doing is extraordinary. He was 5 levels above me. And I want to be here for you and help you, mentor you, because you're doing great work here. I mean, that's like, wow, I had no idea. So I've had that happen multiple times in my career, and it's made a huge difference. And, for your budding entrepreneurs, this is so important to have a strategy. When you have an idea and you haven't figured out. So for you budding entrepreneurs, when you have a fragile new ideas are like little seedlings, where the seed's been planted and they just barely burst out, and they're so fragile because they haven't grown into big trees yet. You have to actually be really, really careful of them. And it means you have to protect your ideas with your boundaries, so that when people give you feedback and criticism, you don't run the other way and abandon ship. I've been in pitches with so many really talented entrepreneurs who have gone on to build great companies. And when they get feedback, they say, that's interesting. And a lot of times we walk out of the door and they'll say, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
And they'll just stick with their idea because they know. And other times they'll go, wow, you know what? He has a really good point, or she has a really good point. I think we should revise our business model. So really, you have to be, especially about your ideas, treat them like kids, like your little sister or your little cousin. They have to be protected, and you want them to, foster and grow them until they're strong enough to stand on their own.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think that's, like some people are visionaries and they just see things ahead of time. And sometimes that feedback you're getting sometimes may be born out of jealousy. So those boundaries are important, because I've seen some, especially younger people that are like, oh, kid, you don't know what you're talking about. And they're getting advice from a 75-year-old guy who doesn't understand the digital aspect of what they have. And I'm like, oh, screw that guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And even though he may have an investment portfolio of blah, 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 you've got something amazing. So I like the fact that you do have some of those boundaries. And again, like, that team, you also will have some resiliency in that team of like also saying, God doesn't know what he's talking
That's right. You gotta, exactly. You can go back to your trusted advisors and get their advice. And honestly, the first idea that you go out with is so rarely the idea that actually makes it to market as a product. There's a lot of iteration along the way. So if you think that your first idea has to be perfect, you'll never get there. You got to realize this is an experiment. I mean, I talk with my clients about this all the time. Everything is an experiment. We want to experiment. How does our idea fly with this audience? We have to experiment. Does this, marketing campaign work to get people to sign up? Is this the right price? Do we have the right features? These are all experiments. And when you learn from them, you refine it. I mean, this presentation I just gave, it's gone through 30 iterations, and I finally boiled it down to kind of something that we can really talk about and get meaty around, And I had to be willing to pitch it and give it and watch certain things fall flat on it. It's just the way it works.
No, we in session number 2, it's what we call our Roth IRA, not the stock market version, but you have your realization, open discussion, tussling, and then heterogeneous grouping. We always tell students to don't pick your buddy, pick people that have different skill sets than you. And then it's the IRA, which is iterate, reflect, adjust, iterate, reflect, adjust, and it's that constant iteration until you do get it right. And even when you think you get it right, it's not going to be forever. So. I love that you're hammering home that point, because it's nothing to be taken personally. It's just an experiment on how this is going to go.
Right. And the beauty is when you actually do succeed, you can know that you'll be able to prove them wrong, right?
That's right. That's part
I knew
of
it.
it. That's part of it.
There's satisfaction there, and you will succeed. On whatever level. I mean, I'll tell you one final little anecdote here. I have invested in companies, and I've lost my investments completely. And that's okay. That's how the startup world was. But I made a decision a few years ago, which is that I was no longer going to invest in companies that I wasn't involved in. And the reason is because when I invest in companies I'm involved in or my businesses, and they fail, I learn a ton. But when I throw money over the table and invest in businesses that I'm not involved in, or I'm not there to experience the learnings if they fail, I throw my money away.
That's a double loss. Yeah. There's no lessons learned, and you lost your money. That's good.
I will tell you, every entrepreneur I know, even the ones that have their companies shut down, or not the outcomes they want, you ask them, would you do it over again? They're like, oh yeah, of course I would. Now I know. I mean, there were painful moments, but I know so much more now than I knew before. And so, it's just that thing where this is all about learning, taking feedback, being creative, being confident, believing in yourself, believing in your ideas, protecting it. That's what we're here for, because we're all unique. The only way we can live to our highest potential is if we really go all in on who we are and why we think differently, and our creativity and our ideas. That's really the way to get there. And there's just so much brilliance out there, and we need it. The world needs it right now.
I don't think of a better way to end. That was awesome. Kate, I sincerely appreciate you spending some time with our students. And anything else you want them to point them towards? Anything else you should look for with Kate?
Yeah, we're going to provide a link to an online survey so you can test whether you have imposter behaviors. You'll get an automatic response back with the results of your survey, and I encourage you to take it and share it with friends and family and whoever else. It's a pretty cool to check it out. My kids took it. It was really funny. My daughter scored high on all the imposter behaviors. My son scored low, which I suppose is gender typical, but they've always been like that. She's always been a perfectionist. He's always been like, yeah, I'll study the night before the exam. So it proved to be pretty true to form.
Awesome. Well, I will include that link with the lesson. All right, Kate, thank you so very much.
Thank you.